Police humiliate deputy at luxury restaurant, but when they discover who he really is, everyone is in shock. What happens when a man's honor is challenged in public? This question echoed in the minds of everyone at the luxury restaurant, The Majestic in Chicago, when Sheriff Jake Mitchell, a man of unwavering principles, decided to have dinner there after a long day of work. The elegant setting, adorned with dark wood furniture and velvet curtains, contrasted sharply with the humiliation. Brad, an arrogant police officer, and his friends Travis and Luke saw Jack's presence as an opportunity to mock him. What began as an ordinary night for Jack quickly turned into a spectacle of disdain, leaving him speechless but determined not to react. Jack, a 48-year-old man, was known for his honesty and dedication to justice. As the sheriff of Cook County, his reputation was impeccable, but his personal life was marked by a tragedy that shaped his character. The loss of his wife in an accident caused by a drunk officer turned him into a fierce advocate against corruption. Though reserved and humble, Jack couldn't shake off the pain he felt being the target of ridicule in a place where he should have found peace. He knew that by maintaining his dignity, he was doing the right thing, but the weight of humiliation followed him as he left the restaurant. In the days that followed, the lives of Brad, Travis, and Luke took an unexpected turn. Brad began receiving anonymous threats, while Travis, who thought he was safe in his new promotion, found himself in the midst of an embezzlement investigation. Luke, the youngest of the group, started facing unbearable pressure at a dangerous precinct. Convinced that Jack was behind their misfortunes, they attempted to confront him, but Jack, with his silent wisdom, refused to be provoked. What they didn't realize was that their own actions and decisions were turning against them. As tensions rose, the friendship among the three officers began to fray, giving way to distrust and fear. Brad, determined to ruin Jack, plotted to frame him for a crime, but he would soon discover a devastating truth. Jack was not responsible for their misfortunes. Jack's life, marked by pain and struggle, contrasted starkly with the moral collapse of the officers, who succumbed to arrogance and a thirst for power. In a surprising conclusion, the consequences of their actions became inescapable, leading them to ruin while Jack moved forward, maintaining his integrity intact. At the heart of this story is a man who faced immense challenges, a sheriff who learned that even in the face of humiliation, dignity and honesty would always prevail. And so while the officers bitterly regretted their actions, Jack became a beacon of resilience, showing that true strength lies in the ability to remain true to oneself, even when the world tries to bring you down. The humiliation he suffered at The Majestic was not the end, but the beginning of a journey where time would settle the score, and the truth would always find a way. In the days that followed the public humiliation at The Majestic, Jack's life continued at a steady pace, but his mind was in turmoil. He had retreated to his home, a modest cottage on the outskirts of Chicago, where solitude welcomed him like an old friend. The walls of that place were silent witnesses to his pain, but also to his strength. Jack often spent long hours on the porch, watching the birds land on the trees, reflecting on life and what truly mattered. Yet the memory of Brad's contempt and his friends loomed over him like a dark cloud. Meanwhile, the atmosphere of distrust and tension at the precinct where Brad, Travis, and Luke worked intensified. The anonymous threats Brad received were not just empty words, they reflected his thoughtless actions. He began to see shadows where there were none, and questioned if somehow Jack was moving in the shadows, orchestrating his downfall. Paranoia began to consume his mind, isolating him further. He had become a bitter man, unable to find comfort in his own company. Travis, in his new position, faced a moral dilemma that tormented him. The embezzlement, which initially seemed like an easy opportunity for wealth, now led him to question the ethics of his decisions. He knew that if discovered, he could not only lose his job but also end up in prison. Luke, the youngest of the group, found himself caught in a crossfire. He admired Brad and Travis, but the growing pressure and fear of retaliation began to create cracks in his loyalty. Jack, on the other hand, faced his own demons. The pain of losing his wife, which had never left him, returned as a constant presence in his life. He remembered her every time he passed the park where they used to walk together. The memories were both a comfort and a torment. He wondered if his fight against corruption and his pursuit of justice were worth the price he had paid. What motivated him to keep going? The truth? Honor? Or was it the hope for a future where justice would prevail over corruption? One night, while walking through the park, Jack stumbled upon a group of young people involved in a fight. Without hesitation, he intervened, separating those involved. In doing so, Jack realized that his calling as sheriff was more than just a job. It was a mission. Yet, even in that moment of heroism, he felt the weight of loneliness. There was no one by his side to share the joy of doing the right thing. He wondered if he would ever find someone who truly understood him. Back at the station, Brad, Travis, and Luke found themselves in an increasingly delicate situation. The investigation into the embezzlement began to close in on them, and the friendship that once united them was disintegrating. The three became strangers, each fighting their own internal battles. In his fury and despair, Brad decided that the only way to take revenge on Jack was to set a trap. He wanted Jack to appear as a criminal, with his actions distorted in a way that diverted attention from his own failures. It was a risky move, but the idea of seeing Jack embroiled in controversy consumed him. Meanwhile, Travis struggled with his own conscience. Sleepless nights became frequent, and he began to wonder if his friendship with Brad was worth it. He remembered Jack, the man he once respected, and how he treated people with dignity even when challenged. This reflection began to create a fissure in his loyalty to Brad. Luke, for his part, was torn. He admired Jack's courage and felt that what Brad was planning was wrong. But at the same time, the pressure from his friends kept him trapped in a cycle of misplaced fear and loyalty. Doubt began to erode his confidence, and he found himself in a dilemma: stand by what was right or protect those who had been his allies until then. Before we continue with this thrilling story, take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any story, and let us know in the comments which city you are watching this video from. Jack, on the other hand, felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on his shoulders. He knew that the fight for justice was not just about facing criminals, but also about dealing with betrayals that emerged from unexpected places. When things began to complicate, he remembered an important lesson. True strength does not come from the absence of fear, but from the courage to face it. Deep down, he knew that the truth would always find a way, and that even amid pain and loneliness, he was not alone in his struggle. Jack continued to walk through the park, lost in his thoughts, when a familiar figure appeared before him. It was Sarah, an old friend he had met during college days. She had always been a source of support, and seeing her made Jack feel a wave of hope. Sarah greeted him with a smile, but soon noticed the sadness in his eyes. "Jack, what happened? You look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders." He hesitated, but the connection he felt with Sarah encouraged him to open up. He told her about the humiliation at the Majestic, the threats Brad was receiving, and his doubts about his own mission. As Jack spoke, Sarah made a gentle gesture, placing her hand on his arm. "You have always been a man of principles, Jack. Don't let others make you doubt yourself," she said sincerely. But even with her comforting words, Jack felt like he was on an emotional roller coaster, rising and falling with each new memory. Meanwhile, at the station, Brad was increasingly consumed by paranoia. He began to notice details that had previously gone unnoticed. Suspicious glances from colleagues, whispers when he entered the room. The pressure left him restless, and to make matters worse, his plans for the trap against Jack were starting to seem riskier by the day. He knew he needed to act quickly before the truth about the embezzlement came to light. However, the idea of tarnishing Jack's name left him uneasy. He grappled with the duality of his nature, between the desire for revenge and the reality of what that would mean. Travis, for his part, was in a state of deep confusion. He spent sleepless nights revisiting every decision he had made over the past weeks. The embezzlement, which had seemed like an easy solution, had become a heavy burden on his conscience. He felt guilty for not stopping Brad, for not acting when he had the chance. At the same time, the pressure to keep the secret kept him in a constant state of alert. He knew that any slip could cost him his career and possibly his freedom. The weight of this choice crushed him, and he wondered if there was still time to correct his mistakes. Luke, the youngest of the group, felt increasingly lost in a sea of conflicting loyalties. He admired Jack's courage, but the fear of opposing Brad and Travis paralyzed him. In a moment of weakness, he decided to lean on Brad, hoping that it would help him feel secure within that circle. But with each passing day, the guilt of not standing up for Jack grew. He couldn't understand how his friends had strayed so far from the right path. There was a growing desire within him to do the right thing, but the fear of losing everything he had kept him tied down. As Jack tried to find a way through his pain, a new situation arose. A series of crimes began to affect his community. Thieves were breaking into homes, and insecurity grew with each passing day. Jack felt that despite his own struggles, he needed to act. He joined some neighbors to patrol the area at night, trying to restore a sense of safety. The cold, silent nights were now filled with conversations and nervous laughter as they shared stories and concerns. Jack realized that even in his solitude, there were people willing to come together for a greater good. Meanwhile, the trap Brad was planning started to take shape. He found a way to incriminate Jack, manipulating evidence and creating a situation where it seemed Jack was involved in suspicious activities. The thought of doing this made him nauseous, but the need to protect himself and his previous actions drove him forward. It was a dangerous line he was crossing, and with each step the emotional burden left him more anxious. The tension between the three friends was intensifying. Travis felt torn, struggling between loyalty to Brad and the desire to do the right thing. He began to have internal debates about what really mattered. Luke, noticing the growing tension between the two, started to pull away, his loyalty to Jack beginning to outweigh his fear of Brad. As the situation unfolded, Jack found himself in a dilemma. He could let himself be carried away by pain and betrayal, or he could stand up and fight. The truth was that he was tired of being the victim. The weight of his limitations was becoming unbearable, and he knew he had to face his fears head-on. Jack decided he wouldn't let Brad destroy him. He would take action and show that justice still had a place in this dark world. With renewed determination, Jack began to investigate on his own, searching for clues that would help him turn the situation around. He wasn't sure what lay ahead, but one thing was certain. The fight was just beginning and he was ready to face whatever it took. Jack was determined to confront the situation surrounding him, but an unexpected event completely changed his perspective. During one of his night patrols with the neighbors, something caught his attention. A group of young people seemed to be acting suspiciously in the area. As he approached, Jack realized they were trying to break into a house. His heart raced. Adrenaline surged through his body. He remembered all the insecurities he had faced and how powerless he felt against his own problems. This made him hesitate for a moment, but the need to protect his community overcame his fears. Jack then decided to intervene. He called the other neighbors for help. Together, they managed to drive the young people away, scaring them enough to make them flee. The feeling of victory and unity was palpable. However, when the police arrived, Jack was shocked by a revelation that left him reeling. One of the young people attempting to break into the house was an old acquaintance from his childhood, Mike, whom he hadn't seen in years. Mike had grown up in a difficult environment, and Jack remembered how he used to be a kind and dreamy boy. Seeing Mike in that situation brought a wave of emotions that Jack hadn't anticipated. The sight of his childhood friend, now involved in criminal activities, shook Jack to his core. He found himself reflecting on his own choices and how circumstances can change people. The image of Mike, with a lost look and an expression of despair, made Jack reconsider everything he had faced. He realized that while he was fighting the challenges around him, there were others, like Mike, who were also facing their own battles. The sadness and compassion for Mike mixed with the determination that was beginning to grow within him. As Jack tried to process what he had just seen, reality hit him like a blow. He realized that his struggles were not just personal. There was a larger world around him, filled with people who, like Mike, were fighting to find their way. The idea that he could make a difference in someone's life, that he could help change the course of a life, began to form in his mind. This new perspective brought a new challenge. He could no longer focus solely on himself. Jack felt he needed to act, not just to protect himself, but to help those who didn't have the same opportunities he did. On the way home that night, Jack was in a whirlwind of thoughts. He decided he could no longer remain idle. He needed to find a way to help Mike and others in similar situations. What Jack didn't know was that this new mission would demand a strength and commitment he had yet to discover. The fight against Brad and his attempts to incriminate him now seemed like just a part of a larger challenge. He needed to be an agent of change. The next morning, Jack met with Sarah again. He needed someone who understood what he was feeling. As he told her about Mike, Jack realized his words were loaded with emotion. He was determined not to let Mike's story end in tragedy. Sarah, upon hearing the story, felt Jack's passion and offered to help. Together they began to plan a way to reach not only Mike but other young people who might be lost. This new mission brought a renewed purpose to Jack's life. He began to get involved in community projects and work on initiatives aimed at helping vulnerable youth. The experience of seeing Mike in such a desperate situation made him realize that everyone has a story, and often those stories are filled with pain and challenges. Jack was determined to make a difference, and that required deep introspection about his own failures and what it truly meant to succeed. As Jack immersed himself in this new journey, he felt the pressure of his struggle against Brad intensifying. However, now he was not fighting just for himself, he was fighting for all those who couldn't fight for themselves. The strength he began to find in his new mission helped him see the situation in a different light. He realized that true victory was not just winning a personal duel, but being a beacon of hope for others. The decision to act and seek change was a turning point for Jack. He understood that life was more than his own battles. It was about how he could impact the lives of others. And so, with a new purpose and determination, Jack began to forge a path that would lead him to fight not only for himself, but for all those who, like Mike, needed someone to believe in them. Jack felt that his life had changed drastically after the night he saw Mike. The image of his childhood friend in the midst of such a desperate situation lingered in his mind. He could no longer ignore the struggles faced by others around him. Now, every step he took and every decision he made were influenced by this new understanding. In the following days, Jack dedicated himself to getting involved in community initiatives. He signed up for a mentorship program for at-risk youth, where he could share his own experiences and help others find a better path. However, the change was not easy. He faced resistance from some who did not believe he could make a difference. The words of one of the young people in one of his first meetings struck him hard. He realized that, as much as he wanted to help, he still did not fully understand the reality of those he was trying to assist. These interactions led him to moments of deep reflection. At home, he would sit on the couch, looking out the window as the sun set. He thought about Mike and how many other people were lost in their struggles. Jack began to wonder if he truly had what it took to be an agent of change. Each time a young person expressed skepticism, he felt an even greater weight on his shoulders. It was as if his own insecurities were resurfacing, trying to undermine his determination. As time went on, he realized he needed to address his emotions and insecurities before he could help others. He started writing in a journal, noting his thoughts and feelings. This writing process became a form of therapy. It was a way for Jack to better understand himself, to recognize his weaknesses, and to transform them into strength. He wrote about the pain he felt seeing Mike in that situation, about the struggle against Brad, and about the desire to do something meaningful. Those pages became a reflection of his journey. While Jack fought internally, he also faced external obstacles. The pressure from the community grew as he became a more visible figure. Some people supported him, but others criticized him, questioning his intentions. One neighbor murmured with disdain that he just wanted to feel good about himself. This criticism hurt him. He knew that was not what he sought, but the words echoed in his mind, creating doubts about his mission. To confront these critical voices and his own insecurities, Jack decided to seek support. He began meeting regularly with Sarah, sharing his experiences and concerns. Sarah became an essential ally, always ready to listen and offer advice. In one of their conversations while having coffee at a small bakery, Jack expressed his frustration. He just wanted to make a difference, but it felt like he was fighting against a sea of negativity. Sarah encouraged him, reminding him that he was doing it for a reason and that every small change mattered. These words helped him reaffirm his determination. He realized that even when he felt he was not making progress, every interaction and every young person he touched was part of a larger process. With Sarah's support, Jack began organizing community events, such as art and sports classes, to attract young people and create a safe space where they could express themselves. He wanted them to feel valued and heard. The first event was a success, with many young people attending and having fun. However, even in the midst of the enthusiasm, Jack felt the weight of expectations. He wanted everything to be perfect, and the pressure to please everyone was intense. In a moment of vulnerability, while cleaning up after the event, Jack sat on a bench. He looked at the happy faces of the young people leaving, but insecurity consumed him once again. He thought to himself, what if this is not enough? What if I can't change anything? It was at that moment that Mike appeared. He had watched the event from afar and, as he approached, made Jack feel a mix of joy and apprehension. Mike thanked him, expressing his gratitude and saying he didn't know there were still people who cared. The gratitude in Mike's eyes made Jack realize that despite all the challenges, he was on the right path. The connection with his childhood friend, despite the difficulties, reignited his determination. He was not just fighting against Brad or the criticism, but for a better future for people like Mike. Jack knew the journey would be long and full of obstacles, but for the first time he felt he was truly making a difference, and that feeling was worth more than any external approval. "You don't know what it's like to live like this, Jack," one of the young people said at one of their early meetings. This statement hit him hard. He realized that no matter how much he wanted to help, he still didn't fully understand the reality of those he was trying to assist. These interactions led him to moments of deep reflection. At home, he would sit on the couch, looking out the window as the sun set. He thought about Mike and how many other people were lost in their struggles. Jack began to wonder if he really had what it took to be an agent of change. Every time a young person expressed skepticism, he felt a heavier weight on his shoulders. It was as if his own insecurities were creeping back, trying to undermine his determination. Over time, he realized he needed to confront his emotions and insecurities before he could truly help others. He started writing in a journal, noting his thoughts and feelings. This writing process became a form of therapy for him. It was a way for Jack to better understand himself, to recognize his weaknesses and transform them into strength. He wrote about the pain he felt seeing Mike in that situation, about the struggle against Brad, and about the desire to make a meaningful impact. These pages became a reflection of his journey. As Jack fought internally, he also faced external obstacles. The pressure from the community grew as he became a more visible figure. Some people supported him, but others criticized him, questioning his intentions. "You just want to feel good about yourself," a neighbor muttered, with a tone of disdain. That criticism hurt him. He knew that wasn't what he was after, but the words echoed in his mind, creating doubts about his mission. To confront those critical voices and his own insecurities, Jack decided to seek support. He began to meet regularly with Sarah, sharing his experiences and concerns. Sarah became an essential ally, always ready to listen and offer advice. During one of their conversations while having coffee at a small bakery, Jack expressed his frustration. "I just want to make a difference, but it feels like I'm fighting against a sea of negativity," he said, looking down at the table. "Jack, you're doing this for a reason. Don't let other people's opinions bring you down." "Every small change counts," Sarah replied, with an encouraging smile. Those words helped him reaffirm his determination. He realized that even when he felt like he wasn't making progress, every interaction and every young person he touched was part of a larger process. With Sarah's support, Jack began organizing community events, such as art and sports classes, to attract young people and create a safe space for them to express themselves. He wanted them to feel valued and heard. The first event was a success, with many young people attending and having fun. However, even in the midst of the excitement, Jack felt the weight of expectations. He wanted everything to be perfect, and the pressure to please everyone was intense. In a moment of vulnerability, while cleaning up the space after the event, Jack sat down on a bench. He looked at the happy faces of the young people leaving, but insecurity consumed him again. "What if this isn't enough? What if I can't change anything?" he thought, feeling defeated. It was then that Mike appeared. He had watched the event from a distance, and as he approached, made Jack feel a mix of joy and apprehension. "Hey, Jack," Mike said with a shy smile. "Thank you for doing this. I didn't know there were still people who cared." The gratitude in Mike's eyes made Jack realize that, despite all the challenges, he was on the right path. The connection with his childhood friend, despite the difficulties, reignited his determination. He wasn't just fighting against Brad or the criticisms, he was fighting for a better future for people like Mike. Jack knew the journey would be long and filled with obstacles, but for the first time, he felt he was truly making a difference. And that feeling was worth more than any external approval. He was learning that true success wouldn't be measured in recognition, but in the impact he made on the lives of those around him. Jack stared at the ground, lost in his thoughts, as the echoes of the young people's laughter still lingered in the air. Mike's presence, although comforting, brought forth a storm of emotions. He remembered the first time he saw his friend sinking into difficulties and how that motivated him to act. But now, in the face of the event's success, doubt consumed him again. He couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how much he was doing, it still wasn't enough. The pressure was mounting, and Jack felt he needed to prove to himself and the community that his intentions were genuine. It was then that during a mentorship meeting, a conflict arose. One of the young people, Lucas, raised his voice and questioned Jack's sincerity. "Why do you care so much? You don't know what life is like here. You just want a trophy to feel good." Lucas's words hit him like a punch to the gut. Jack tried to respond, but the words failed him. He felt frustration rising, mixed with sadness. I just want to help," he murmured, his voice barely audible. The silence in the room became deafening. Everyone's eyes were fixed on him, waiting for a reaction. Jack realized this was his chance to assert himself, to not let himself be defeated. He took a deep breath and decided it was time to share his own story. With a firm voice, Jack shared his journey, from childhood alongside Mike to the moment he decided to take action. He spoke about the difficulties he faced and how each one shaped who he was today. "I'm not perfect. I don't have all the answers, but I know what it feels like to have no one to turn to. And that's exactly why I'm here, because I want you to know that you're not alone." Jack's words resonated in the room, and slowly he began to notice changes in the expressions of the young people. Some seemed more receptive, while others still carried skepticism. But at that moment, he didn't mind. He had opened up, showing his vulnerability, and that was an important step. After the meeting, Jack found Lucas outside. The young man looked thoughtful. "I'm sorry for being hard on you," Lucas said, without looking Jack in the eye. I just didn't know if you really cared." Jack felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "I understand, and I really care. I want to help, but I also want to learn from you. I don't have all the answers, but I'm here to listen." With that, a bridge began to form between them. Jack realized that to make a difference, he needed to be open to learning and empathy. That moment of connection was a turning point. It was what he needed to understand that true change didn't come from impositions, but from sincere dialogue. That night, Jack went home with his thoughts bubbling in his mind. He reflected on how he had felt powerless, but now for the first time, he felt he had found his purpose. The journey wasn't just about helping others, but also about allowing himself to grow with them. He understood that every failure and every criticism were opportunities to learn and rise again. In the days that followed, Jack dedicated himself to building a space for dialogue within the mentoring program. He encouraged the young people to express themselves, to share their stories, and to listen to one another. The environment began to change, and the energy in the meetings transformed. Jack saw how vulnerability and honesty created stronger bonds among them. The peak of his journey occurred at a community event he organized. It was a fair with music, art, and stories. Jack was nervous, but seeing the young people having fun and interacting made his anxiety dissipate. He was surrounded by laughter, hugs, and even tears of joy. Amidst the excitement, he spotted Mike, who was there, watching everything with a genuine smile. Jack approached him. "Did you always believe I could do this?" Mike nodded, the emotion visible in his eyes. "I knew you had something special inside you. You just needed to discover it." Mike's words were a balm for Jack's soul. He finally understood that what mattered wasn't external approval, but the impact his actions had on the lives of those around him. In that moment, Jack felt a growing warmth within himself. He had overcome his insecurities, found strength in his vulnerability, and more importantly, built a community based on empathy and mutual respect. The journey had not been easy, but every challenge faced had prepared him for that moment of pure connection. He realized that true wealth wasn't in recognition, but in the lives he touched and the friendships he formed. Jack smiled, knowing that regardless of what the future held, he could always return to that moment and remember that by opening up and allowing himself to learn, he had become an agent of change, not just for others but for himself. Jack sat at a table in the corner of the room, observing the movement around him. The community fair had turned into a true festival of joy. Laughter echoed, and the lively voices of the young people filled the air with vibrant energy. He felt part of something bigger, a network of connections that had once seemed so distant. As the days went by, Jack realized that the change he sought in the community was not an isolated goal. It was a collective journey. The young people began to support one another, listen to each other, and value each other. The space they had created together became a safe haven, where they could share their stories without fear of judgment. Lucas, the same young man who had questioned Jack, became one of the most active members of the group. He often took the floor, encouraging others to open up. One afternoon, while they were organizing the next meeting, Lucas approached Jack. "I don't think I ever thought I could feel so much connection here," he said with a genuine smile. "You really made a difference." Jack smiled back, feeling warmed inside. "This is just the beginning. We're all learning together." Weeks passed, and the atmosphere in the group continued to evolve. Jack began to notice that the conversations were becoming deeper, the concerns more authentic. The young people were allowing themselves to be vulnerable, and that brought them closer. He remembered how lost he had felt, but now saw that his role was not to be a savior, but a facilitator. He didn't need to have all the answers. What mattered was the willingness to listen and support. In one of the meetings, a young woman named Anna shared a powerful story about her struggle with anxiety. She described how often she felt invisible, as if her voice had no value. Hearing her, Jack was moved. He realized that each of them had a unique story, and by opening up, they were not only healing themselves, but also helping others feel seen. "You're amazing, Anna," Jack said sincerely. "Your courage to share this is inspiring." At the end of the meeting, Anna approached Jack. "Thank you for creating this space. I didn't know I could speak openly until now." Jack felt a wave of gratitude. "You all are incredible. I'm just here to help give voice to these stories." They exchanged a look that said it all. They were in this journey together. As the fair drew to a close, Jack reflected on the transformation that had taken place. He remembered his initial insecurity, the pressure he felt to be perfect. Now he understood that imperfections and vulnerabilities were what made each of them human. He felt lighter, more connected to those young people, and more at peace with himself. On the night of the fair, after the excitement, Jack retreated to a quieter spot. He looked up at the starry sky and took a deep breath. The success of the event was not just a personal victory, but a testament to the power of teamwork and empathy. He realized that each smile, each word of support shared, was a reflection of the change they were creating together. Mike joined him, and the two contemplated the scene from a distance. "You did an amazing job, Jack. I'm proud of you." Jack smiled, but he no longer felt like the only one responsible. "It's not just me, Mike. We did this together. Each of them brought something special, and that's what really matters." Mike nodded, recognizing the depth of Jack's words. That night, as he said goodbye to the young people, Jack felt a wave of happiness. He realized that the journey was just beginning. There would be challenges ahead, but now he had a community by his side, something he had never imagined possible. The bonds they had created were strong and enduring, and he was eager to see where this new journey would take them. With a heart full of hope, Jack knew that no matter what happened, he had found his place, and more importantly, he had found himself along the way. The real change was within each of them, and together, they were ready to face whatever came their way. Jack watched the vibrant scene before his eyes, now feeling like an integral part of that community. The transformation he sought was not just about changing the lives of others. It was a journey of self-discovery and connection that shaped him in ways he never imagined. Through interactions, shared stories, and mutual support, Jack found not only a purpose, but also a new understanding of what it means to be part of a group. After the fair, he reflected on everything that had happened. The group of young people was closer than ever. They had supported each other in their vulnerabilities, and that collective strength became a source of inspiration. Jack realized that his initial insecurity had been replaced by a sense of belonging. He didn't need to be perfect, and that liberation brought him an inner peace that had once seemed distant. However, the path was not without obstacles. Amidst laughter and celebrations, Jack faced an unexpected situation. An old schoolmate, Tomas, who had always belittled him, appeared at the fair. Tomas, now a young man threatened by the growth of Jack and his friends, attempted to undermine their work. He mocked the group, saying they would never truly impact the community. Anger welled up in Jack's heart, but he remembered the lessons he had learned. Instead of responding with hostility, he took a deep breath and turned to Tomas. "What we are doing here is not about competition. It's about unity and support. What you see as weakness, I see as strength. No one needs to feel alone." Jack's words were a powerful reminder of what they had built together. Tomas looked surprised, and at that moment, the expression on his face changed. To everyone's surprise, he walked away without a sarcastic reply, as if he were reflecting on his own insecurities. That night, as the young people said their goodbyes, Jack felt that something deeper was at play. He had transformed a confrontational situation into an opportunity for growth, both for himself and for Tomas. The true revenge, he realized, was not to stoop to the level of those who had belittled him, but to rise above it, showing that unity and empathy always triumph over hate. With a light heart and a renewed spirit, Jack knew that his journey would not end there. He was ready to face new challenges, always surrounded by friends who supported him. The experience had taught him that true success was not just about personal achievements, but about the ability to connect and help others rise. As he looked up at the starry sky, he felt a wave of gratitude for every moment lived, every tear, and every shared laugh. And so Jack invited everyone to reflect on their own journeys. He wanted each of them to know that change begins within each person, and that together they could face any adversity. In a world that often seems divided, he knew that empathy and friendship were the true keys to transformation. If you have also gone through tough times, remember, your experiences matter. Share your stories and inspire others to do the same. Let's build this community together, Jack concluded, feeling that each word would resonate in the minds of his friends. In the end, he made a plea: like, share, and subscribe so we can continue spreading this message of love and connection. Change begins with each of us.